On today's episode of Survival Dispatch News, we're discussing a potential economic collapse and what you can do.
Yes, today's video is brought to you by Nutrient Survival. This is a really cool company. There's a ton of information on their website. They have a patented freeze drying process for all their stuff. They have very delicious menus. They have 3 to 90 day survival packs. Of course, you can buy individual packs. Here I have some awesome lasagna. We've tried it here at Survival Dispatch and we love it. It's nutrientsurvival.com. And as always, we'll have a link below.
Back. We're joined today by Jason Sawyer, North Georgia.
Hello.
Good to see you. And Nick in Utah.
Hey there.
So, Jason, this topic was top of mind for you. So why don't you kick it off for us?
Yeah, so it seems to be the topic on everybody's mind as of late. Inflation's through the roof. There's this looming economic collapse that everybody seems to be talking about. And most people, I would say, are at least a little bit fearful of it in some shape or form. And I think that being fearful of it is not the right tactic. I think that we really shouldn't live our lives in fear at all, really. It's impossible not to worry about some stuff. I get that. But we need to invest our time, our energy, our resources into being prepared for something like this, as opposed to just worrying about it happening and then, freaking out when it finally does. When is it going to happen? Is it going to happen in our lifetime? Is it going to happen tomorrow, next year? Nobody really knows, and that's the problem. But the best thing that we can do is just be as ready as possible for when it does happen.
Yeah, valid points. Nick, do you want to chime in?
Sure. I mean, when I look at economics in general, the one thing I always start off looking at is that history tells us a lot. So we know that something is more than likely coming, some sort of economically. We're seeing patterns arise that we've seen in my lifetime. I'm seeing patterns arise, but it's no need to be fearful, I would say, just along the lines with what Jason was saying. But there are definitely things that can be done to help alleviate the pain that comes with a long-term downturn. And it's just, can you see what's coming? And for me, as I start to look at things, I go, okay, well, we know that the last time we saw conditions like this, in 3 months from that, X happened, Y happened. Warren Buffett is famous for looking at patterns and making decisions based on that. Same with a lot of the great economists are just looking at cycles and patterns. So if you take that and you look at historically and you go, hey, things have happened before, we've come out ahead just fine, but there are things we can do to be ready for it.
Yeah, inflation's been top of mind for everybody for quite some time, and whatever the current number is that they're throwing out there as inflation, you need to take into consideration that the old Biden administration removed food and fuel, from their inflation numbers, and they did that on purpose so that they could skew the numbers and make it look not quite as bad as it actually is. So, depending on whose numbers you really want to believe, we're probably somewhere north of 20% inflation right now. Since this Obama or Biden administration came into effect again. Yeah, I'm a little bit political right now.
I think a lot of people are anticipating the Great Depression 2.0. And I think that's what a lot of people are getting really worked up about, because, that was tough times for a lot of people. My granny, for example, I've spoken to her a lot about it because she lived during the the only Great Depression, I guess, in our country. And she was young then, she was a child, but she tells stories about how they got by and what they had to do to make ends meet. And it was a tough life, no joke. It was hard work. It's not the cushy lifestyle that we have now, where we can sit around and eat Cheetos and watch TV and just make life happen. They had to get up early. They had to work all day long until the sun went down, and then they had to repeat again over and over and over again. And it was tough times. They didn't have all the luxuries. They didn't have multiple cars per families, and they didn't have all the endless resources. They couldn't go on the vacations and all the stuff that we take for granted today. Does it mean life is going to end? Does it mean that we're all going to die and there's going to be cannibals roaming the streets? I don't necessarily think so. At least I hope not.
Yeah.
But I do think that the soft, cushy, climate controlled lifestyle that we are currently living could potentially come to an end, or at least be changed significantly in the very near future.
Well, I think we're the distinction between, now and then would be that a lot of Americans lived in very rural areas or very small towns, whereas
Yeah,
83% now live in large urban centers. There's cities.
83%. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
So,
Yeah.
it's easy for those of us who have some land and have a place in the country to say, well, bootstrap yourself, be more self-reliant.
Mhm.
But as well as anybody, growing crops is not easy.
No,
People think that they're just going to plant some seeds and they're good to go. It doesn't work that way.
not easy. No.
Discussed multiple times, if somebody spotted a deer during the Great Depression, it was front page news. And, the population was approximately 1/3 of what it currently is. So the concept that you're going to go hunting and fishing and feed yourself, that's not going to happen.
It'll work maybe for the really, really short term, perhaps if you're skilled, and you've got the place to do it and the resources to do it, but very short term. Everyone's going to catch on to that idea very, very soon. And the hunting and fishing to feed your family is not really going to be a thing. I mean, maybe potentially on the coastal areas, but even then, probably not. It's just going to be a rough go. I think that, like you were saying, people that live in rural areas like myself will have a little bit easier time. I guess it won't be such a big shock, as it would be to people in urban areas. So that's a positive thing for people like myself. If you're in an urban area, that's tough. I mean, what do you do if you're in an urban area other than get out? But then if you get out of the urban area, you come to my area, and I don't want you here either.
So, somewhere around 22 million Americans left urban centers to move to rural areas last year, and
Yeah,
the trend's been accelerating in recent years.
I've noticed it. I've definitely noticed it where I live. The traffic is worse. The road noise. I live about a quarter mile from a road, and I can hear it more and more, and it gets louder and louder. It seems like every year. So I definitely have noticed that.
I mean, just look at the traffic in Blue Ridge, for crying out loud. It's ridiculous compared to
Yeah.
just a few short years ago.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you guys are preaching to the choir to us here in Utah. I mean, our population has just exploded in the last couple of years. So, that's everywhere. That's not just by y'all.
Yeah, and you can't blame the people. I mean, that's good on them for doing the right thing for the families, right? It's frustrating for the people that want the quiet, peaceful rural area, but you can't blame them. It's just like immigrants, right? Immigrants from south of the border. You can't blame those people for wanting a better life and taking advantage of the system. I mean, I would do exactly the same thing if I was in their state. It's easier said than done. It's easy to criticize people for doing stuff like, but hey, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to provide and protect your families.
So, I mean, I get asked this question frequently. I'm on different podcasts, different shows. And the way I typically position it is, if you have disposable income, invest in food and water, because it's not like you're betting on a horse that may or may not come in. You're going to drink that water. You're going to eat that food no matter what. So, the quickest thing that people can do is try to stockpile a little bit,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of plastic bottles, bottled water and stuff. But if you're buying a case of bottled water, buy 2 cases and stack it up. If you're buying foods, make sure you have some foods that have a long shelf life. Not everybody can afford to go out and buy a freeze dryer. Not everybody cares for the taste of MREs and stuff like that, but there's still lots of other goods that you can, that are either canned or you can put them in mason jars. If you've got freezer space, put it in there. So I think at the very least, rural or urban right now, before if we do have an economic collapse, stockpile. You're going to eat it. You're going to drink it. You're going to use it. It's not a bad investment. As a matter of fact, it's probably a pretty good investment, because as inflation goes up, and again, they took those numbers out to skew the number, you're only going to spend more money for food and water down the road than you're currently going to spend. So
It's not going to be cheaper.
Yeah.
No.
Stack up the food, number one.
Yeah.
For people who live in the country, not everybody has the skills to be, Mr. Green Jeans like Jason, to be a farmer and whatnot. Yeah,
Right.
I dated myself. Stop laughing. I even saw somebody in the comments of his last video say, "Holy cow, I remember Captain Kangaroo, Mr. Green." Yeah, don't think the younger people are going to understand that, but that's okay. So part of it, though, is that you should probably acquire some of these skills now, and these are perishable skills that were just considered life, like Jason just pointed out. Not too many generations ago, being able to farm, whether that be livestock or crops, that wasn't an unusual skill. It's a perishable skill. It hasn't been practiced. A lot of people have lost it, but I would encourage people in rural areas to start helping themselves, start planning some stuff, start learning what the process looks like, just like the competition Jason is in right now, with the friendly competition that he's in.
That's right.
I don't know that livestock is for everybody right out of the gate. There's a lot that goes to that. So, but it would still encourage people to look into it, talk to people who do know, the ins and outs, especially in your area.
Yeah.
What else could people do, from the two of you in advance?
Well, one of the big things I started to think on was when I started into the business world, it was basically on this idea of 2% inflation is basically always built in, just how our system works, and just going, well, what skills can I develop that I can use to sell, trade, etc. So, along the lines of what we were just going into, if somebody is trying to learn some of these skills, they're going to be valuable. At which point you now have a tradable knowledge commodity, which you can use if Chris, say, here is great at keeping cattle going, and Jason's great at growing carrots, and I'm the guy that knows how to put the two of them together and actually put it over a fire and make food. Well, between the three of us, we have a working ecosystem. So the more you're able to develop the thoughts, the knowledge, the more you're able to do and learn these bartering skills, the better overall you're going to be.
That's actually good advice. Gain some knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm all about gaining knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's a super good point. I was talking about this with a buddy the other day. I think a lot of people have this vision that the world is just going to implode and society as we know it will end, and we're going to be back to the Stone Age, after the SHTF, and it's going to be everyone for themselves. And to a certain degree, there's going to be a lot of chaos happening. And I understand like that initial shock, perhaps, if there is an initial shock, it might just be the boiling of the frog in the pot kind of deal. I don't think society is going to collapse. I think it might become more difficult. I think that it might be, it's going to change in a dramatic way, perhaps, but it's not going to go away. We're still going to need things. I'm still going to be able to do stuff. I'm still going to possess the skills and knowledge that I have, and I can still build a fence for the farmer down the street that needs help, and I can barter my way into some of his beef. You know what I mean? Like I think that it's still going to be possible to make that happen. I think people just are going to have to be, accepting or willing to do something, to make ends meet.
So, I mean, we can stockpile food and water. We can gain knowledge. I think another thing that we could do, getting back to the crops and whatnot, there was a guy I met here years ago in Central Florida, and he was at all the farmers markets around here. And I made a comment to him. I said, "Man, you must have quite a piece of property, for your farm to grow all these crops." He said, "Not at all." He said, "I do it all vertically." So he didn't have a big piece of land, but he built himself greenhouses where everything was racked and stacked vertically. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but for argument's sake, let's say he had 2 acres, he was farming the equivalent of 10 acres,
Wow.
Sort of thing. It was pretty interesting. So even if you live in the city, now let's exclude, people who live in, say, apartments. But if you live in the city and you have a backyard, for example, you can start to grow some stuff. It's not easy. You'll have tough lessons learned, but once you get down the road a little bit, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to produce enough food to at least satisfy part of your need. So I think that would kind of be the next thing. It ties together with the knowledge, learn how to do some of these things. None of us live in apartments, but any idea what people who live in apartments could do in an urban setting other than stockpile?
Stockpiling is going to be the biggest, man. In an urban setting, that's going to be Whew, that's tough. The other thing that I was going to mention along those same lines is building a community of trusted, helpful, like-minded individuals. Because even in an urban area, you could potentially rely upon other individuals and maybe develop community farms, community gardens, that kind of stuff. And like inner city stuff, that's outside of my realm of expertise. I avoid inner city costs.
So let me throw this one out here. So, we're discussing knowledge and stockpiling, and Nick brought up the concept of bartering, and so did you.
Mhm.
Is there anything that people who live in cities that they could potentially stockpile that they could use to barter, for food and other stuff? I mean, I'm just trying to think of all the potential avenues that somebody who, lives in a condo, lives in an apartment, really what are their options other than get out of Dodge?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of bartering items out there. There's a long list, everything from gold and silver and precious metals like that to liquor, alcohol, that kind of stuff is always going to have value. I don't know how everybody feels about that, but that's always going to be valuable, and people are always going to want it, regardless of the economy.
That is actually a great point. So, my wife's grandparents, of course, lived through the Great Depression. And she said that they always recommended that if things ever got that bad again, stockpile people's vices, alcohol, cigarettes, things like that. You will always have a market to barter with that. So, yeah, that's actually a really good point, Jason. Well done.
Yeah, something that I feel like I did some research a while back on the Great Depression, and there's a couple things that always maintained value, and they were always sought after, and that was entertainment and alcohol. And those two things usually go together. Those things never went out of style. They never went out of business. Entertainment and alcohol was always something in high demand, regardless of what the economy's doing.
So learn how to play a musical interest and stockpile whiskey.
I'm just saying, it's an idea.
There's worse things in life.
Problem solved. I mean, we can shut this conversation down.
Yeah, I don't.
Music lessons.
Feeding an alcoholic more alcohol, but moral issues might get in the way of some things that you have to do for, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
What I will say is also in most urban environments, there is actually an opportunity to do some farming with the grow lights and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them have small versions where you could actually get some vertical farming. But the other thing I thought of was medical training and skills, and anything that's going to be in that long range knowledge. You may not know how to drive a plow, but there's more to it than just driving plow.
Right.
Yeah. A mechanic could be a very valuable individual, someone that knows how to fix things.
Well, yeah, we have a tremendous shortage though of skilled tradesmen these days,
Mm-hmm.
So as my generation gets closer and closer to retiring, the generation after me was more inclined to go to post-secondary school as opposed to pick up a trade. So that's going to be an ongoing issue. So that's a good point as well. I mean, we should probably try to put together a list in the description of all these things: stockpile food and water, stockpile things that you could barter, like alcohol, for example. Seek to acquire knowledge. So whether that knowledge is how to grow crops, how to fix things. I think medical advice is fantastic, Nick. I think that's a really valuable skill, especially when things are bad. Like hospitals already have exorbitant bills. They're not going to get any better, get into some sort of economic collapse here.
Yeah, and along the same lines as the medical stuff, take care of any medical issues that you have now. Get if you've been putting off this surgery, or you've been putting off going to the dentist, or whatever. There's a potential that that's not going to be as easily accessible, or it's not going to be nearly as inexpensive as it is right now. So go ahead and get your body taken care of and be as healthy as you possibly can, so you can alleviate some of those ailments now when it's still relatively easy to do.
No, that's great advice. You don't have to look too far into the past where, many times serious dental issues was a death penalty. There was no getting out of that tailspin for a lot of people. So yeah, that's a good thing to prep your health.
Yeah. Be as fit, be as healthy, be as active, be ready for those hardships. I mean, if you've been sitting on the couch for the past 20 years, or sometimes more, doing nothing, and you're 50 pounds overweight or more, you think you're going to walk outside and start hoeing the field? Like, that's going to be tough, man. Be really tough.
Well, the physical aspect is tough, and then everything else that goes with it, right? You know, pest control and, you know, rodents getting into all your stuff. You know, I'm sure your rabbits are going to love all the stuff you're trying to grow right now.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. The whole thing, it's a challenge. You know, you have to have some skills to pull that stuff off. Nick, you got any other ideas?
I'm just trying to think through some of the stuff. I mean, one of my go-tos is always anything culinary related. I mean, if you have the ability to take something apart and maximize whatever it is you do have, I mean, if you're able to get access to a side of beef and you can turn it into 32 meals, I mean, that's going to be great. I have some background as being a chef. I don't know if you can see my coat in the back. So it was one of the first things that popped into my mind, but it's just any of these major skills that we've lost over time to the glories of the internet of, oh yeah, I can just hire a guy to take care of that for me. Excuse me, is probably the right way. We got to remember how to do all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Down to change our own oil.
Yeah. So in other words, have a good collection of stones so that you can go town to town and make stone soup.
There you go.
You know,
Do what you got to do.
I mean, it's an old fable, of course, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, actually, there's some good stuff's come out of this little brainstorming session. Do you guys want to add anything else before we wrap up this episode?
No, I don't think I have much more to add. I think I did a video not too long ago on like my top 5 things that I would recommend doing before economic collapse or the SHTF or whatever you want to call it. And I think we've addressed pretty much all of those with the exception of faith. That's a big one for me. My faith strengthens me and allows me to take risks and challenges and be more generous and just do more for the people around me than if I lacked that. So I think that faith is a big one, and regardless of how people feel about it that are watching this, it does a lot for me. It's a big deal that my faith is strong, and I continually work on that. And it's not all on me to take care of the problems that should arise. I have faith that God's going to help us and help provide for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've done quite a bit, covered the topic of mindset a lot lately. You've covered it. Don Mann, SEAL Team 6 has covered it. We've had some articles on the website. At the end of the day, you are what you think. So, your faith and spirituality plays into your mindset, which plays into, if you think bad things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen. If you think good things are going to happen, there's a chance at least that may play out that way, sort of thing. Nick, you got any other?
You believe you can? You're right.
Yeah, if you believe you can. Absolutely. 100%. Mm-hmm. Nick, you got anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Like I just said in the beginning, all these things come in cycles. Don't be afraid. Just know that it's happened in the past, so we know what we're doing moving forward. Do your history and go learn a trade. Go learn a skill that you can use.
Love it.
That's
good. Really good point.
Yep. Great advice. All right, guys. Well, we'll wrap up this episode. For all you out there in Survival Dispatch land, if you could like, comment, subscribe, we really appreciate it. It helps a lot with the algorithm. And Jason and Nick, appreciate you guys coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for watching, friends.
See you guys next time.
All right.
Bye.
See y'all.